Hey, Trekkers. What's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and now we come to my Part 2 review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Yes, Part 2. Now, I shall dive into episodes 3, 4, and 5, and as I clearly stated in my Part 1 review. But yeah, so the next 3 episodes of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Yeah, because these next 3, they were some pretty good ones. And especially, yeah, I would have to say Episode 3 is so far one of my favorite episodes of this season. Yeah. Yeah, each of these episodes, what they have to offer, and these 3 episodes, the certain characters that they center on. Because in Episode 3, it primarily centers on Lon Noonien Singh. And for Episode 4, well, because it primarily centers on the pilot of the Enterprise. It mostly centers on her, but at the same time, it does center on Pike and the others, because when they go down on this planet. But yeah, with what goes on with Erica in Episode 4 was really good. And for Episode 5, well, primarily centering on Spock, and with what goes on with Spock is very interesting and, well, not really good for him. Yeah. But just, yeah. Having watched these episodes, and like I said in my Part 1 review, where I did watch a chunk of Season 2 long before, and as of now, I've been reviewing Season 2, I got up to, the last episode I got to and watched was Episode 4. After that, I didn't get around to finishing watching the rest of it, but I am now, because I'm now reviewing it. Duh. So, yeah. And because I had to rewatch the first 4 episodes, because I'm pretty sure I did see Episode 4, because when I went back and watched that, well, it shows that I already did, but just, yeah. But, just overall, having rewatched the next, 2.5, basically, because episodes 3 and 4, having rewatched those, because, yeah, really good ones, and now finally having watched Episode 5, and what goes on with Spock that I just said, yeah, they were definitely some really good ones, yeah. Alright, but, yeah, so, with that out of the way, the first things I've had to say about the next 3 episodes of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, now out of the way, now, let us dive in / break down the episodes themselves, obviously, starting with Episode 3, which being titled, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Okay, so description / the story. Lon travels back in time to the 21st century Earth, and in Toronto. Yeah, that's the location where she's at in 21st century Earth, to prevent an attack which will alter humanity's future history and bring her face to face with her own contentious, if I said that right, yeah, legacy. Okay. So, getting in Episode 3 itself, because, yeah, because, again, this primarily centers on Lon, and there's a little recap of what was going on with her and certain moments that happened with her in the first season and so far in this season. Yeah. And because, from what we had seen so far in this season, most notably in the last episode, with what she was going through and trying to find a way to help Una, and when there was a moment where Neera told her, and, encouraged her and such, just told her that, she's not a monster and all that, just, But, well, because we see Lon doing her duties and such as security and so on, and even when, say, like she reports to Spock about his Vulcan instrument being heard from between the walls and such, and also reporting to Pelia, Carol Kane's character, that she stole something, but not really stole, but, with what Pelia explains to Lon. And then at one point, Lon has a random encounter through the corridors, the hallway of one of the decks, where this, out of nowhere, this mysterious man pops out of nowhere. And he has a time travel device. And yeah, the dying man on the Enterprise, he provides Lon with the time travel device and revealing a changed timeline where the Federation is gone and Kirk is captain of the Enterprise, because that's what happens. And, we don't know exactly what's going on and where this man came from, but judging by his wardrobe, he obviously came from the past. But the way he is talking about the past and such, well, if it occurred to anybody, because it just didn't seem like he really was from the past. And besides, he has that time travel device, so yeah. Does that not, does that not show? Just, and yeah, he's credited as the gray-suited guy. Well, that's the best way to describe him, and that's literally what he wears. And there's not that much of him, because he dies, and when he passes the time-traveling device to Lon. But yeah, overall, the gray-suited man, being played by Christopher Wiley, if I got that last name right. But again, me sometimes, so he dies, his body mysteriously transports to wherever, and because of that, well, everything changes around Lon. She's still there, but everything, her world, her universe is gone. Now she finds herself on the Enterprise that's under the command of James Tiberius Kirk. And yeah, because this is where we once again see young James T. Kirk, captain, this time of the Enterprise, and Paul Wesley, once again playing Captain Kirk. Yeah. And with how much we got of Paul Wesley towards the end of Season 1, it seemed like, in my opinion, that off to a good start. And I feel as though that with this episode, yeah, this is where he really gets to shine. And even though it is Kirk in a different timeline, in an alternate timeline and such, and yeah, because with everything that has changed, and through Lon's point of view, and just, yeah, because, where there's no Federation, no Starfleet. There is no Starfleet at all. In fact, there's this war that's going on, and Spock, he is on a Vulcan ship, and when, communications are open between Kirk and Spock, Spock's not a part of the Enterprise crew working alongside with Kirk. There's none of that. And a war going on that has to do and involve with the Romulans. Because Lon having to explain this to Kirk on what all has happened for her, and because you think by now, even say in the 23rd century, whatever, that maybe they would be totally aware if at any chance time travel or something could happen, but yeah, even because Kirk, believing that Lon, a complete and total stranger on board the Enterprise is crazy, but of course she's not. And it's very difficult for her to explain on what all is happening. And it just gets a bit out of hand even when Kirk tries to take the time-traveling device. But, Lon pushing the button, and both of them, they end up traveling back in time, and also because, with whatever it is that has happened in the 21st century that changed everything, which would lead to no Federation, no Starfleet, none whatsoever, and that Lon has known. So yeah, with them traveling, again, into the 21st century in the 2020s, and like I said, they arrive in Toronto, and thus, they start to investigate with what they're going to find and what's going to go down and such. And yeah, the chemistry, to go ahead and bring this up, the chemistry and interactions between Lon and Kirk is so great. Even when, Kirk, he never stepped foot on the planet Earth. In fact, he was not born on Earth. He was born on a ship called the Iowa. Yeah, the Iowa, that's how it's pronounced. I mean, as we all know, Kirk was born there on Earth at a place called Iowa. So, yeah. Well, because, it's, winter time's taking place, and, Kirk especially not used to the atmosphere and weather conditions of planet Earth, and, doesn't take them too long to, change wardrobe. I mean, especially if you noticed in the background, there were a few people staring at them, of course, So them, changing some clothes. In fact, there's a moment where they actually put on the same getup, but Kirk has to change his getup, have a leather brown jacket, which, the getup he then puts on looks pretty good on him. And how are they going to pay for their clothes? Because they don't have money on them. They don't have any money of the 21st century. But that's when Lon gets an idea to, not pickpocket, but basically slip something into a lady's purse, and thus when, the lady then leaves the store, the detectors go off. And because of that, gives them the opportunity to sneak off. Yeah. And, so now they have 21st century getup, and, still, they have to investigate on what all has happened and what it is that had changed history. And, there's a moment where Kirk, he actually spots a group of people playing chess, and noticing and realizing that, by winning the game of chess, they'll get money. So that's what Kirk does, spending quite a little bit of time playing chess, and eventually when he wins. So now they have money, and there's a moment a little later where Kirk has his eyes at a hot dog stand and gets 2 hot dogs for each of them. Lon passes getting a hot dog, but, Kirk a few times insisting that, she should take a bite of a hot dog, and just, because her missing out on eating, especially because, technically, Lon's not her when she's hungry, right? Because, eventually she does eat the hot dog. Then Kirk goes back for another, batch of hot dogs. But, and eventually, because they would settle down at a hotel, and we would then see Lon. It starts to hit her. Not fully, but it's getting there. Where she apparently starts to have feelings towards Jim. And, because Lon checking out Kirk because he's sleeping on the sofa, the couch in the hotel room, and, she left the room, and then Kirk he then woke up and noticed that, she had been in the room and turned off the light in the other room, I think, Kirk obviously would then start to realize that, Lon seems to like him and such, okay. And, discovering the change, because, for Kirk and Lon, as I said, them trying to figure out on what the whole change is, what has changed everything, and which would lead to no Federation and no Starfleet. Well, both of them would realize that the change wasn't a simple explosion, because, and when I say explosion, a bridge in Toronto, a very long bridge, out of nowhere, it exploded. And even right before that happened, there was a mentioning, Lon mentioned this to Kirk, that that she knows about Kirk's brother, Sam, George, Sam, Tiberius Kirk and such. So she's known his brother, but not him. So the few times that Kirk's brother is mentioned, and and when he was mentioned at first, then the explosion happens outside the bridge, and because with discovering that the bridge has been destroyed, and they discover something that came from the rubble of the bridge. And even when, they noticed a photographer taking the photos, and they try to, figure out what it was, and because when they discover it, then at one point, and to speed things up some, because they hijack a car, technically, because Kirk used a Vulcan nerve pinch on the guy who was going to get in his vehicle, and, and Kirk explaining to Lon that, after spending some time in prison, and with his cellmate, a Vulcan, learning the ways of the Vulcan nerve pinch. So, because of that, yeah, Kirk and Lon, they hijack a car. They try to catch up to a government jeep and such, yeah, because of what they've taken that came from the rubble of the explosion of the bridge in Toronto. And, yeah, just trying to catch up to the black vehicle. And even when, like, say, the police, they notice that, yeah, Kirk and Lon, they're speeding down the line. So, yeah, they would get pulled over, and, yeah, the police officer being played by Luke Marty, yeah. And, well, at one point, the lady who was taking photographs of the rubble and such of the bridge, named Sarah, with an E, yeah, being played by Adelaide Kane. I think, yeah, I got her first name right. You know, she's a very, talented actress, and I remember her most notably from in the final season of ABC's Once Upon a Time. And I'm sure you know, too. If you know, just, yeah. She actually helps out Kirk and Lon get out of this situation where Kirk is going to be taken to the station, and she's recording this, and it'll be on social media and such with what the police are doing. They're making a big mistake and saying to the police that Kirk is a doctor and stuff like that, and this manages to work. And Kirk and Lon, they pretend to be husband and wife. In fact, Lon changes her name to Vanessa, and Kirk just, going by Jim. Yeah, because that's his nickname, Jim Kirk. So, yeah, and actually Sarah actually helps out with their situation. And, well, because with Kirk mentioning to Sarah that his wife had been in outer space, and everything that had been witnessed and so on, just, yeah. And also, yeah, because, like, the mentioning of the cold fusion, yeah, and the cold fusion reactor in Toronto, and, yeah, and because, like, the information and with the help of Sarah that she gives to Kirk and Lon, well, this helps out pretty well. And, well, because with Sarah being quite an expert of, space stuff, in fact, she has a picture of something that was in the sky, which being a Romulan ship. That's really interesting. But just, yeah. And to still speed things up some, because, well, the further on they continue their, mission to do whatever it is and to stop this from preventing from happening, the changing of the history and such, well, they at one point get some help from someone whom, well, as we recall, in the first episode of Season 2, Pelia, because her alien species having a long lifespan, so, yeah, during the time of this, and in the 21st century, yeah, Pelia being alive and young, and being present on Earth and such. So they managed to locate and find Pelia, and they get some help from her, although, yeah, even though, because the business that she's running, not, nothing engineer and stuff like that. But still managing to get some help and, well, managing to use a watch to help them out with where they have to go to next. Yeah, the digital watch in this being used by Time Operative, yeah. And by the way, because it's very similar to a device that was seen in an episode of Star Trek Voyager, which being Relativity, I think, yeah, said that right. And, yeah, because by using it, it'll help where they're gonna go to next. And also, yeah, the chemistry between Kirk and Lon starts to build up some more. Yeah, because, there was a moment late in the evening, and before making their destination, that, Kirk and Lon starting to show their feelings towards each other, and even they go for a kiss. I don't know about you guys, but personally, I think the chemistry and romance between Kirk and Lon is a pretty good one. And yeah, and until I continue on watching season 2 and how that's gonna turn out, because because obviously when all this towards the end of the episode is fixed, she's back in her actual world / universe, it's gonna be very different. So yeah, even when like Kirk, how he feels towards that, he will not exist in the timeline / world he's in, and so on. Yeah. But, so when they're making their destination, and, because, again, the mentioning of the cold fusion reactor, and, they make their destination, where basically, where they are supposedly going to find the cold fusion reactor, it's located at the Noonien Singh Institute. That's pretty interesting. Which, being in Toronto... And which, by the way, is powering their operations, yep. But, them making their destination there, and very eerie for Lon to see that she is in the building of, her ancestry, her ancestor Khan Noonien Singh, and, obviously Khan would be present in this timeline, and, even if he just so happens to be in the building. We'll just have to wait and see. But and them trying to get further into the building, into the cold fusion reactor, when at one point, they are, out of nowhere, greeted by Sarah, who has a gun pointed at them. And we find out that Sarah is no ordinary person. No. She just so happens to be a Romulan agent in disguise. Yep. And obviously, Sarah, this Romulan agent, she's obviously linked with the change in the history and timeline. And, even Kirk, because, he tells Sarah to, pull the trigger, because by doing so, then, the alarms will go off and so on, and, Kirk being serious about this, but if she's willing to do it, that's the thing. And, even when Kirk says, try me, and she does. She shoots Kirk. And, he collapses, the alarms do go off. And, because, Kirk wasn't bluffing. He was telling Sarah the truth. And that screws up Sarah's plans for what she was going to specifically do. And a very sad moment where we see this Kirk in the hands of Lon Noonien Singh, and when their chemistry and starting to build a romance was happening, this happens. Ugh, just one of those things. And Kirk, he dies, unfortunately. And Sarah taking Lon hostage, and change of plans for Sarah, she's now going to kill Khan Noonien Singh. Khan happens to be present in the building, and coming up to the room where Khan is, and with now Sarah planning to kill young Khan Noonien Singh, and because the reason for killing Khan is because to prevent the eugenetics, am I saying that right? Yeah, if I am, but again, me sometimes, the genetics wars, which Khan being linked with. So, that's now the reason why Sarah's gonna kill Khan. And, there's a fist fight between Sarah and Lon, and eventually, Lon would grab the gun and shoot / kill Sarah. And because of that, Sarah disintegrates, melts and such, because that's something that Romulans can do. Because that started, I think, because in, in the first season of Picard and such, where the Romulans can do that, they burn, they disintegrate, or something like that, Anyways, because, we've never seen that before, in many of the past Star Trek materials. Even going back to, say, the original series. I'm just saying, but not that I'm complaining, just that's very interesting. And, Sarah, having been killed, she's done for. There is a moment where we do see young Khan, and young Khan being played by young Desmond Desmond Sivan, if I said that right, yeah. And young Khan worried if Lon is gonna kill him, but no, because she's not, and man, just the moment that Lon finds herself in, having interact with her ancestor, Khan, and because her just, and of course we know Lon just being, ashamed going by that last name and so on, but yet, with the little interactions she has with young Khan, she does her very best at that. That was great. And once the time is restored, nothing has happened, and Sarah's been defeated. Well, the time-traveling device, now Lon is able to push the button and go back to the future. Yep, because early on, because when Kirk and Lon, they first arrived in the 21st century, there was nothing else they can do by pushing the button on the time-traveling device. It was just stuck. But because now everything's been taken care of, the Romulan agent has been defeated, now the time-traveling device is working and, pushing the button and boom, she's back. Everything's back to normal. Pike is on the bridge, Una is, Spock, and even Uhura. Uhura was on the bridge when Kirk was captain and so on, but everything's good now. And, there's one moment where Lon is greeted by Agent Yamali, if I said her name right, being played by Allison Wilson Forbes. And whom she is, she just happens to be from the future, and she's a part of the Department of Temporal Investigations, and which basically is a Federation agency responsible for handling and investigating temporal anomalies and violations of the Temporal Prime Directive. Yep. And, because I've got this, I'm looking at it, because this was, first introduced in Deep Space Nine, and has appeared in various novels and games, and of course, including Strange New Worlds, but, so that's pretty cool. So her presence, she basically, gives all the details to Lon about what all has happened. And, the gray-suited man was one of them, and he unfortunately was not able to, stop/prevent with what was going to change the timeline and such. But when he came across Lon and passed on the time machine device to her, and from there on. And, just thanking Lon for completing the gray-suited man's mission, and even tells her that she can't say a word about this to anyone. That's nice to see. The fact that, Lon still has those 21st century clothes that she was wearing, including the digital watch. So after that greeting with Agent Yamali, again, if I might be saying her last name right or wrong, after she disembarks, and needs the time-traveling device back, there's a moment where Lon gets in contact with Kirk. And basically, she says that she needs to have the birth date of his brothers, because of this is security stuff and such, that she explains to Kirk. But really, we know why she got in contact with them. And, hey, at least Kirk in the main/prime timeline is all right. But it's unfortunate for Lon because it's not the exact same Kirk that she fell in love with. And even if Kirk is this Kirk, the main Kirk, is if he's gonna have feelings back for her whenever they meet in person, and and when she disconnects and, they both hang up, this was very powerful. It really was. Lon just breaking down in tears, especially because, after everything, and especially towards Kirk. There's no denying that. You couldn't deny it either, right? Tell me that was not a powerful, moving moment. Seriously, that was really excellent. And Christine Chong, she did a fantastic job as Lon Noonien Singh in this episode. And up to the end of this, with the emotion, the impact, Christina Chong delivers as Long Noonien Singh. Excellent. All I've really got to do is applaud and say, excellent. Yeah. Yeah, man, pardon my French, but it's true. What a hell of a way for this episode to end off, leaving us with a emotional impact coming straight from the character of Lon, and the camera focusing on the digital watch. Ugh, yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, so episode 3, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. That was a really good episode, definitely. And like I said earlier, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow would probably be, so far one of my favorite episodes of season 2. Yeah. It was fantastic. And yet another great episode of Star Trek that involves time travel. And when it comes to the characters of Star Trek, they would find themselves in, modern times and, clothing, whether they're like in, say, a big city or even like, say, if they're on the holodeck. You know what I mean? Those kind of episodes. Most of them are, if not one of the best ones. But that's not all of them. Plenty of other great episodes that does not have to do anything with that kind of stuff. You get what I'm saying. But yeah, again, overall, episode 3, Tomorrow and Tomorrow, was another excellent episode so far for season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Okay, now we come to episode 4, which being titled Among the Lotus Eaters. Description / the story. Returning to a planet that dredges up, tragic memories. Captain Pike and his landing party find themselves forgetting everything, including their identities, as he confronts a ghost from the past. Okay, so, episode 4 itself, was another pretty good one. And as I said earlier, from episodes 3, 4, and 5, But with what goes on in episode 4, well, one of the first things that happens is Pike and his girlfriend, whom, also being a captain of a starship, we once again see Captain Battelle. They have a little dinner date and such, but despite the fact they get quite a few interruptions, well, because they're captains, they have a big duty. It does get out of hand, unfortunately. It doesn't go too well, because Pike mentioning to Battelle that the relationship harming her career and so on, and this, of course, does not settle well with Battelle, and I think, if I'm using the word correctly, their relationship right now, a bit limo, because, hopefully they might patch things up. It's hard to tell, because right now, not long after that, their dinner date is cut short, and, Battelle disembarking on her starship, and, from there on. However, all of that is interrupted and set aside when Pike and the others on the Enterprise are informed and discover something that has happened on Rigel 7, which, by the way, Rigel 7, the planet we first saw being in the first ever Star Trek episode, the pilot, the Cage, one of those planets that Pike found himself on, and which, Rigel 7 being the home planet of the Karas, I think, if I'm pronouncing that alien species name right. But, so they basically, they find out that a mission that happened, where these couple of Starfleet crew members, they journeyed to Rigel 7, but they disappeared after making their way to Rigel 7, and having believed to have been all dead. One of them most notably being Zach Nugayan, if I said his last name right. And the Enterprise grew, they set a course for Rigel 7, and what we learn more about Rigel 7 here, because just so happens that the asteroids around the orbit of Rigel 7, the asteroids emitting radiation and stuff like that, causing anybody whom is on the planet of Rigel 7 to lose their memories. Yeah. Well, that's not a good sign, for one thing, because the debris, I should say, the debris field of the asteroids, causing the strange memory loss effect, and, from Pike to Lon Noonien Singh and the Doctor, all three of them journey down on the planet, and, with them going to investigate and find what they're going to search for on the planet's atmosphere and so on, slowly but surely, each of them would start to hear this ringing, and eventually they would start to hallucinate, kind of, and their memories would be kind of screwy, and eventually their memories would be lost. And with what they discover on Rigel 7, they first disguise themselves as, those who are not Starfleet officers, because, after what happened last time, and, with them being revealed as Starfleet officers, and with what's specifically established in this episode, understandable. In fact, because they saw, a crop that, on the satellite photos of Rigel 7, where we see a crop that shows the Starfleet symbol and so on. So again, Pike, Lon, and the Dr. and Bega, because when they arrive, it doesn't take them too long to be discovered, and for them to know, the Karas, that they are from Starfleet. And they just so happen to be greeted by the ruler of the Karas in this palace, which being Zach. He's become this ruler, having these laborers be slaves and servants, and the laborers, their memories being wiped and erased, because, and with the effect of the asteroid field and so on, the meteor field. And Zach being played by David Hune, if I even said his last name right, again, you know me sometimes, so, and just, still, slowly but surely, all three of them, the Doctor, Lon, and Pike, they would start to have their memories wiped and such, that they have memory losses, and meanwhile, on the Enterprise, the same thing's happening to the Enterprise crew, slowly but surely. So far, at first, six memory losses, and even say a moment where it's recommended that they should keep personal files, right beside them, the files that, tells them who they are and what they do, their rank in business on serving the Enterprise. So that could come in handy, but sadly it doesn't. That unfortunately does not work, which should, but still, fortunately doesn't. Just each of the crew members, and even when it comes down to, say, the only two remaining on the bridge, Spock and the helmsman and such of the Enterprise, Erica, because it comes down to just the two of them being on the bridge, because when this began, when the crew of the Enterprise started to hallucinate, I don't know if using the word hallucinate is right, but you get my point. But point being is that Uhura was basically one of the first ones to have experienced this, hearing a ring in her ears, and can't explain it, and not remembering, starting not to remember who she is, and what she's doing and such, and not remembering doing this and that. And again, when the same thing happens to the other crew members, and it's just, it's very crazy, especially when at a certain point, and when Spock, he definitely tells Erica to keep in mind, and keeping that file of hers, whom she is, and that she's the pilot of the Enterprise. Well, because that doesn't last too long for each of them, not knowing who each of them are, and Erica, blaming this on Spock, because this has to do with, piloting the Enterprise and so on, and Erica especially, because, as I said earlier, this episode, Erica's one of the main characters that's focused on. Of course, everybody else, is the main focus. Obviously, where we have Pike and Lon and the Doctor on the planet. But I'm just saying, on the Enterprise, mostly it's Erica. And yeah, it's great to see that, we get a lot more of Melissa Navia, whom plays Erica, Lieutenant Erica Ortigas. She's amazing. Yeah, she shines in this episode. And I think even as of now, because some of my favorite characters from Strange New Worlds, I'd say would probably have to be, it's like a cross between Lon and Erica. Just something about those two characters. Just something about them. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, so Erica, especially at a certain point in the episode, she starts to get some help from the Enterprise computer. And the Enterprise computer, once again, being voiced by Alex Kapp, where the Enterprise computer is telling Erica who she is and so on and so on. And, Erica wanting to know where home is, and the Enterprise computer, telling her where her home is, on which deck, and so on, and seeing all the other crew members, like Nurse Chapel, and I didn't mention Nurse Chapel yet, but yeah, Nurse Chapel, Jess Bush, of course, and everybody else, they're hallucinating, and they're just, they're looking around, confused, and just have no idea, it's crazy. And the fact that no one is steering the Enterprise, and it's colliding with some tiny rocks, asteroids, and so on. And the pressure that's put on Erica. But eventually, and thanks to the Enterprise computer, her starting to remember more who she is, and that she's the pilot driving the USS Enterprise. And her finding herself back on board the bridge. Yep. And, she gets the Enterprise out of the way of the asteroid field. And meanwhile, back on Rigel 7 fingers, well, yeah, I mean, because, again, Pike and the others, their memories being lost and them being laborers. And they even interact with one of the laborers named Locke, if I even said that right, because his last name, the last letter of his name being the letter Q. So yeah, being played by Reed Birney. I'm pretty sure I said that right. And yeah, I mean, he was a pretty good character. The interactions that each of them have, and just them trying to figure out who they are, and that they're not laborers themselves. They don't belong here, and so on. Even when there are a few times they try to fight their way, and at one point it would lead to Lon, Noonien Singh, being very wounded and just very, drowsy and just very, very, is very critical and such. But obviously she's going to pull through this, it is mentioned to Pike and the others that it's rumored that in the castle ruled by Zach, that apparently there's this container, this case that holds their memories, and thus Pike attempting to, make his way into the castle and trying to retrieve them, even when, because he fights some of the guards of the palace, the castle, and when it comes down to him and Zach, not to mention that Zach, lended the Kara's, Starfleet technology, weapons, and so on. And heck, he still has his red Starfleet uniform on. And yeah, the fight between Zach and Pike, and when Pike is determined to get the memories of them, out of, to just get them out of the case and retrieve them, but Zach telling Pike that it's bullcrap, it's nonsense, that's just a theory, and so on, an urban legend, etc. And eventually, because when Pike realizing, and because Zach tells him that being inside the castle prevents anybody from having their memories be lost and so on, but being outside of the castle, your memories being lost and such. And again, because of the asteroid field out in space, because of the radiation and so on. But overall, because Pike, he was this close to killing Zach, but thankfully he didn't. And because his memory is starting to get back into him, and with what he has discovered and learned further, and so on, But eventually, all ends well for the characters. They manage to, end all this, and, Zach coming to terms, and, it's up to Starfleet on what to do with Zach when he goes back. And the Enterprise, they take the main asteroid out of the planet's orbit, and to prevent no more memory losses and so on. And the asteroid just being a simple asteroid field, that's all. Nothing to do that causes the memory losses and such, yeah. And one of the last things that we get is, one more moment between Pike and Batel in this episode. Batel returns to the Enterprise. Pike apologizes, and, and especially because Batel did give Pike this gift, and Pike was wearing it. And while he was on Rigel 7, and he couldn't remember what it was, but he knew at that time that, there's a reason why he has this and so on. And, because all that he went through in Rigel 7, because, Batel was responsible for getting Pike back up there, and just, you get what I mean, just, with what the episode specifically states. And, Pike, stating to Batel that, if so, because if it doesn't work out between them, and just, their relationship has gone downhill, and him saying that, he knows that he doesn't deserve her, they don't deserve each other, just, and just overall, I mean, him wholeheartedly apologizing. But Batel herself, I mean, obviously she does forgive Pike, but no, but it seems as though that, again, she forgives him, accepts his apology. No, I mean, because their romance isn't over. Yep, they're on good terms. And even Batel telling Pike by kissing him and such, and, telling him that, let's see what happens in the next 30 minutes and such. Yeah, but that's great to see. Like I said earlier, I like the chemistry and relationship between Pike and Batel. And with what I first had to say about Batel in my Part 1 review, and with the mentioning / shout out to my mom, because when Batel was brought up in our conversation about Strange New Worlds, But that was a great way to end off the episode that, things are better now for Pike and Batel. And after all that happened on Rigel 7, But with that, Episode 4, Among the Lotus Eaters. It was another pretty good episode. Nice to see that we get the returning appearance of planet Rigel 7, and the more we know and learn about Rigel 7, and with its asteroid field out in its orbit, and the characters and what was going on with each of them, Pike, the Doctor, and Lon being some of the focuses, Batel appearing, and also Lieutenant Erica Ortigas being another big involvement in this episode. A lot was centered on her, and she was the first one on the Enterprise to start to remember who she is, and thanks to the Enterprise computer. And just, overall, Episode 4, it was another pretty good episode for Season 2. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Okay, here we go. Episode 5, and which being the third and last episode for my Part 2 review of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. And Episode 5 being titled Charades. Okay, so description / the story. A shuttle accident leads to Spock's Vulcan DNA getting removed by aliens, making him fully human, and unprepared to face T'Pring's family during an important ceremonial dinner. Okay, so, with what goes down in this episode, because, here's the thing, because sometimes we would know some certain things that are going to be coming in shows and what's shown in the trailer, so we knew, and when the trailers came out, that at some point in Season 2, we would be getting an episode where Spock becomes human. So we already knew that, but how this happens, well, we are about to find out, because, during a mission that involves both Nurse Chapel and Spock, they're on a mission, and in a shuttlecraft, they come across a vortex, which, they find themselves in the vortex, and it's not looking too good, but eventually, they obviously survived the vortex and such. However, both of them are okay. But technically, with the exception of Spock, even though he's perfectly well and healthy, there's a big change in Spock. And that being where his Vulcan DNA being temporarily removed. I mean, for now, and with, how long this goes in this episode. Yeah, and now him being fully human, and and right before the intro starts, it was pretty funny, and with the cut, where Spock literally about to say, what the fuck? It cuts right as he finishes the rest of the F word. I mean, who can blame Spock with his reaction to that? And now that he's fully human and acting like a human, and I gotta say, Spock as a full-blown human, and with Ethan Peck as Spock, well, he's fantastic. With what he brings to Spock as a full-blown human, even with, with what, say, Leonard Nimoy, from Leonard Nimoy, Zachary Quinto, what each of them brought to Spock whenever his human side would come out, was really good. I mean, especially because, at times where we would see Spock, have so much emotion, or he would unleash his anger. Yeah, that, and that being the human part of him that does those things. But yeah, just how the way Spock acts in this episode is full human, not to mention that, this is very troublesome, I should say, for Spock, because, well, his Vulcan fiancée, T'Pring, and her parents, they're going to be arriving on the Enterprise for, a dinner and such that I just explained, and, because of their marriage and stuff like that, this tradition, and, and the fact that, T'Pring's mom, T'Pring, her mother, D'April, is against, has a grudge, I guess you could say, towards humans, and even with how she feels towards Amanda Grayson. And because speaking of Amanda Grayson, Spock's mom, we finally get the appearance of Amanda Grayson in this episode. And as was mentioned in the first episode of Season 2, that, because, Pellel and Amanda Grayson knowing one another, as it was established, and and Amanda Grayson, young Amanda Grayson, being played by Maya Kirshner, if I said her last name right, and she does a fantastic job playing Amanda Grayson. And Spock, obviously, he doesn't want his Vulcan fiancée and her parents, and T'Pring being played by Alora Naik, if I said her last name right, and Sevet, T'Pring's father, being played by Michael Benier. I think I said that right, and especially, because he especially doesn't want his fiancée to know, and, especially with a lot of pressure that's put on T'Pring, and with her parents and such, especially that goes for her mother, It is mentioned that, T'Pring's father has full appreciation for Sarek, so that was mentioned. Also, Lieutenant George Samuel Kirk makes an appearance, and, because a bit of a montage of when we would see Spock being human, and the interactions he has with the Enterprise crew, for George, Spock pointing out to George that he should clean up his mess on the table when there's, a meeting. And Spock getting more aggravated and just telling George to clean up his mess, and just, he was almost about to lunge at George, and George, he then obliges and he cleans up his mess on the table. And, when we would see Spock and, hanging out with the female crew members from Lon, Uhura, and Erica, and Una, and they're having some laughs, and when Spock starts to laugh, but it gets a bit disturbing, the way, because with Spock laughing contagiously and how they're reacting, just oh. And meanwhile, Nurse Chapel and the Doctor, they're trying to figure out a way to cure Spock. And if there's any chance and hope that there can be a cure to bring Spock back as not just a human, but also a Vulcan. Because again, he's half Vulcan, half human. And besides, there was a moment where Captain Pike and the Enterprise crew, because, they they opened communications with what came from the vortex and was responsible for the change in Spock. And that being this alien entity, which being called the Kerhovians. I think I said that right. Yeah. Again, they're the Kergovians. They are this alien entity, in which, having encountered the Enterprise, and one of them that interacts with Pike and the others is named Yellow. Yeah, that's it, Yellow. That's the name of one of those Kerhovians, Yellow. And Yellow, being voiced by Anujali Kane, if I said her full name right, I might have butchered it, but again, you know me sometimes. And unfortunately, they don't get any luck from Yellow, because, Yellow explaining that she, I presume, had healed not just Chapel, but Spock as well, but not in a good way. And again, they don't get any luck from the Kerhovians and Yellow, and because the Kerhovians, it's against them with what Pike and the others specifically mentioned to them. But despite that, the Doctor, and especially Christine Chapel, they're not going to give up until they find a cure in order to save Spock and to get him better. And hopefully, if this can be done in time before, at some point, Spock's Vulcan fiancée and her family, they have to show up for the ritual dinner and such. And even with Amanda, when Amanda showed up and, informing Spock and the others with what was going on, the situation, the fact that the dinner thing had to be pushed back / delayed a good chunk of times. But by this point, it's gone far enough. And eventually, Amanda would discover and learn that Spock has become full-blown human. And when Spock first, greeted his mom at the transporter room, he was wearing a special Starfleet toboggan. Looks pretty cool, though. But, in fact, Spock letting his human self out, his emotions, and telling his mom, because of the pressure that's put on him, and with this being delayed and such. And, and again, it didn't take her that long, and for her to quickly realize and discover that he's full-blown human. And, and because Amanda knows, with her being involved, they got to figure out what they're going to do, and while the Doctor and Nurse Chapel are still in the middle of trying to make a cure, Amanda, for the first time, would then teach Spock the ways of lying as a human. And and to know exactly what to do, because he's no longer Vulcan for now, can't remember exactly the specific things to do as a Vulcan. So Amanda teaching Spock, and again, with the addition of lying, even say Spock has to handle a boiling hot pot, with the tea and such. It doesn't settle well for his hands, but it does to Amanda, because, she spent some time learning the ways to do the Vulcan thing of how to get use and to handle a boiling hot pot. And all these other things that Spock's learning. And eventually when, Spock's fiancé and, technically his in-laws, T'Pring's parents, they do show up. And T'Pring, once again being played by Gia Sandhu. I think I got her last name right. So they finally show up, and by the way, because thanks to the Doctor, he made and provided Spock with fake Vulcan ears to stick on his ears, his human ears, and also do something with his eyebrows, and his hairdo, quite different slightly than how his hairdo is when he was originally a full-blown Vulcan / human, Even, T'Pring and her family and her parents, they can tell the difference with his hairstyle. And Spock trying to keep it together, and a few times, letting out his human side, but still, trying to stick with how to talk and sound like a Vulcan. In fact, because there was one moment where Uhura, Erica, Una, and Lana Noonien Singh, they helped out Spock how to speak and act like a Vulcan, and with the eyebrow thing, Yeah, my mom is also, shout out to my mom once again, because she's quite good at that, the Spock eyebrow raise. Even I am too, fascinating. And in fact, because they're telling Spock how to sound with his voice, like it's deeper and such. Just and unbeknownst to Spock, he had no idea that that's how he specifically sounds. And, well, I mean, he seems to be doing pretty good with that. And when the dinner ritual thing happens, and, so far, with what's going on, Spock's doing great. And a few times where Pike is trying to stall some time and offer to Preen and her parents some Vulcan dishes he learned to make and such. Also, to talk more about Chapel, because, again, this episode, not only does it primarily center on Spock, but it also does primarily center on Chapel as well. Chapel. Yeah. But, in fact, there's a moment where Christine Chapel is being interviewed for a 2-month archaeological medicine fellowship. Yeah, sponsored by the VSA. And, the first time she does the interview with, this Vulcan scientist and so on, he serves as an instructor at the Vulcan Science Academy and such. Durik, if I said his name right, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And Durik, being played by Ryan Tarek, yeah. So the first interview that she takes doesn't go too well and such, yeah. And especially on account of the situation that has been happening and where Chapel is involved with helping Spock. In fact, to speed things up still, because there is a moment where it occurs to her that maybe, there can be a possibility to go back and to interact and to convince the alien entities, and hopefully to interact with Yellow. And she gets some help from Erica and Uhura. They tag along with her. And unbeknownst to Spock, but the Doctor, of course, found out. And thus, because they take a shuttlecraft and they make their way to the Vortex, and where they will meet and hopefully meet/interact and negotiate/convince those alien entities. And hopefully they'll speak to Yellow. And when they do arrive there, man, because they find themselves in this one part of the Vortex, which is really cool. Like, they're in this room where it's like the walls are crystal and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And, one alien entity that pops in, it's not Yellow. However, the other alien entity is voiced by the same voice actress. This one being named Blue. That's interesting. I assume there are others that probably go by the names of the colors from purple, red, orange. Probably so, but yeah. But anyway, so they first interact with Blue, and, Christine Chapel trying to, get something out of Blue and wanting to speak with Yellow because of the situation with Spock. Not that much luck, but eventually Yellow would step in, and And, even Erica and Uhura knew this, that one of the ways to save Spock and, eventually get the cure made is Chapel expressing her true feelings towards Spock, even though she's been, she does, but she's denying it, just keeping it to herself. But eventually she does come out and express her feelings towards Spock, that, she considers him a great friend, but wish that there would be more for both of them and such. And eventually, she managed to negotiate and talk with the alien entities, Yellow most notably, and thus it would lead to Chapel eventually finding the cure. And even before that, because meanwhile, with Spock and the others, because with that dinner thing proceeding, the rituals and such, the specific things Spock has to do, it is not looking too good for Spock, and just, In fact, because with what T'Pring's mom is sensing towards Spock and how he's acting, it doesn't go well. And, especially, it's going to come down to where they have to do, a mind meld and such, and, And Spock, he would be informed by the doctor, well, the cure is, it hasn't been in full progress yet, and with the mentioning of Chapel, it's Chapel. Chapel having gone back to the vortex and speaking with those alien entities and such. And, well, to mention this now, Spock's revelation, because, well, eventually Spock would reveal to T'Pring and her parents that, unfortunately he's turned into human and ripping off the fake Vulcan ears. And he also defends his mother because, with T'Pring's mother not having any nice things to say about Amanda and, with that humans. And again, Spock defending his mother and revealing that the Vulcan engagement ritual was performed by him being the human, and leading to a potential rift. This would lead to a potential rift in his relationship with T'Pring. In the end, it didn't go so well with the engagement ritual, and because I meant to say engagement ritual. Dinner involved, but still, primarily engagement. Chapel showing up and giving Spock the cure, and it'll take a little bit for Spock to get his Vulcan ears back and so on. And still to speed things up some, because a couple of the last moments in this episode, because T'Pring making the decision and how upset she is towards Spock's deception. Also the fact that, T'Pring wondered why Spock didn't share with her what had happened to him. Well, and he clearly explained, and as I did mention earlier, because of the pressure that was put on her, and with her mom especially. Hey, at least T'Pring's father wasn't that difficult, but her mother especially. And thus, T'Pring making the suggestion that they should take a break in their relationship. And thus, that's what happens. And not long after that, and once, everything's back to normal, everybody has settled on the Enterprise, and that especially goes for Spock, well, there was one moment where, after all that, the engagement dinner, Spock was going to pay a visit to Chapel, but Chapel actually, coincidentally, was going to come see him, and just so happened to be right outside and was going to make her way into his quarters. And, because Chapel having shown and acknowledging her feelings, and here's another thing, because Spock sacrificed himself technically to save Chapel from when they were in that vortex, putting the shields around her, so couldn't forget to mention that. And because that was clearly an indication right there for Spock's feelings towards her. And then finally, Spock acknowledging and admitting his feelings for Chapel. And it doesn't take too long for Chapel to go in for a kiss, and Spock's just wondering, what is this? And, she's like, I don't know, just shut up, and just, no more talk, they just make out, and that's how the episode ends. But that was a great way to end off the episode, because finally, they admit their feelings for one another. And from there on, we shall see what happens. For both of them. And not to mention, because during the engagement ritual, Pike's still trying to stall some time, he did bring up, and which being the title of the episode, the whole thing of charades. And when he explains the whole thing of charades to T'Pring's parents, that was so great. Well, thus we know and why the episode is called Charades. But anyways, and also, it still didn't go well for Chapel, with the Vulcan Science Academy thing with Derek, and even when Chapel mentioned to Derek about her encounter with the Vortex and so on, all that, but just, Anyways, but, Episode 5, Charades. That was another excellent and pretty good episode for Season 2. Because everything about it was really great. Seeing Spock fully human, the situation he's in, and the fact that it's just a bad timing because of the engagement ritual that he's supposed to do with his Vulcan fiancée T'Pring, and with what goes on with Nurse Christine Chapel in this episode was really great. The encounter of these alien entities were pretty interesting. The chemistry between the characters, from Spock to T'Pring, the first appearance of Amanda, Spock's mother, seeing Duprene's parents, and yeah, with what goes on with each Spock, Chapel, and all the others, and eventually, and because, yeah, both Spock and Duprene, they've taken a break, well, now the opportunity arrives for Spock and Chapel to admit their feelings for one another. That was great. Just, yeah, overall, Episode 5, Charades, was another pretty good, excellent episode of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure the same goes for some of you. Yeah. So with that, Episodes 3, 4, and 5, they were some really good ones, still, so far, and where I'm up to of Season 2. Yeah, everything that each of these 3 episodes had to offer, with their storylines, what goes on with these characters. Episode 3 centering on Lalon, Noonien Singh, and with Kirk. Episode 4, they return to Rigel 7, and the memory losses they go through, and with what goes on with Charades, Spock becoming full-blown human, Chapel determined to cure Spock, and when she finally admits her feelings towards Spock, and the same would go for Spock, and what would happen between Spock and his Vulcan fiancé. Yeah, just everything about those 3 episodes. They were really good ones. And what about you guys? What did you think of the next 3 episodes of Season 2 themselves? Which ones were your favorites? And what were some of your favorite moments, and what was going on with the characters? Did you get some good laughs with the funny moments? Did you get teary-eyed with what these episodes had to offer, especially Episode 3? Yeah. Were you happy to see that in Episode 5, Spock and Chapel, they finally got together, and in Episode 4, we got the return of Rigel 7, we got a lot of Erica in that, and just overall, what do you think of Episodes 3, 4, and 5 themselves? And with what I've had to say, my Part 2 review of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, and just again, what did you think? Leave comments, and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my Part 2 review of Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episodes 3, 4, and 5, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, among the Lotus Eaters and Charades. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. And, well, stay tuned for my Part 3 review of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Next up, Episodes 6, 7, and 8. Until then, take care, peace out, and live long and prosper.